Hello, and welcome back to News Desk Now with Chet Waterford. I'm your host, Ashley Bennett. I'm still not Chet Waterford. The graphic has not yet been updated. I want that noted again. We have a lot to cover tonight, so I'll just keep moving on as usual. In February of this year, the current administration established a task force dedicated to eliminating what it described as $250 billion in fraud across federal programs. $250 billion. So, I looked into it. The executive order establishing the task force states, and I'm quoting directly, that some states have, quote, refused to institute basic fraud controls, end quote, and have, quote, embraced loopholes that avoid individual eligibility validation, allow self-certification of eligibility, and expand eligibility far beyond what Congress intended, end quote. That is a severely strong claim. We here at News Desk Now, and by we, I mean me, during my weekend, looked into that. Before the task force was established, Vice President Vance and the administration made claims that the Biden administration had rolled back fraud protections. The administration has also taken credit for fraud prosecutions that were initiated under the Biden DOJ. I looked into that too, and the DOJ Fraud Department publishes annual reports. I compared them based on years of the Trump administration and years in the Biden administration. These are their numbers, not mine, still available on the DOJ website. In 2019, during Trump's first term, the fraud section charged 478 individuals and recovered $2.9 billion from corporate resolutions. In 2021, Biden's first year, 333 individuals were charged and $3.1 billion recovered from corporate resolutions, with a conviction rate of nearly 99%. In 2024, Biden's final year, 234 individuals were charged and $1.714 billion was recovered. In 2025, which was the first year of Trump's second term, 265 individuals have been charged with $1.01 billion recovered from corporate resolutions. The current administration recovered less money from corporate fraud in its first year than either its own first term or the Biden administration in comparable years. I'm not going to editorialize on that. Previous administrations published clear summary reports of fraud prosecutions and recoveries. The current administration doesn't publish this as clear, but we can see what is happening. They are generally seeing less successful prosecutions and recovering less money than previous administrations, even though, according to them, the previous administration has rolled back fraud protections. Now, the task force memo specifically describes states refusing to hand over personal data on SNAP recipients as an example of failing to institute basic fraud controls. And I need you to stay with me here. In December of 2025, the administration threatened to cut off SNAP funding to mostly Democratic states for not complying with a request for personal data on SNAP recipients. A court froze that request in February of this year while the case was adjudicated. The USDA and individual states already review fraud, both at a state and national level. States review approximately 50,000 benefit cases each year. That information passes to the national level, which reviews around 10,000 of those cases. If the administration has the labor force to review more cases, why not start with the ones already on their desks? The states described as refusing basic fraud controls refuse specifically to send personal data on SNAP recipients who are already in compliance with national guidelines to the federal government, a process a court has since frozen. Those states are mostly Democratic, though let's not forget Kansas also did not comply with this request. Kansas is not mentioned in the executive order. I just want you to have that information. Now, the executive order singles out Michigan specifically more than once, pointing to the state's 9.53% SNAP payment error rate as an example of what it calls rampant fraud. 8.3% of that 9.53 are overpayments that were identified, overpayments that cost the federal government nothing because states are required to repay those funds and correct the issue. Again, this is not me deciding what is happening. This is all available on the DOJ website currently during the Trump administration. Looking at overpayment error rates and total payment error rates for 2024, Michigan doesn't even make the top 5. Alaska has a 24.66% payment error rate, and 22.5 of that are overpayments. Alaska has a smaller population than Michigan. Alaska's governor is a strong ally of the current administration. The president has referred to him personally as a friend. Alaska is not mentioned in the executive order. I can't say for sure why the administration chose to target Michigan, a state that has come under scrutiny from the president and members of his administration since the 2024 campaign. What I can say is this. It is true that Michigan has a 9.53% SNAP error rate. It is also true that there are other states, larger and smaller, Democrat and Republican, with significantly higher error rates that are not the subject of such intense and specific scrutiny in this executive order. Both of those things are true at the same time. Now, California. California is one of the states the administration has targeted for not complying with the data request. California is also actively prosecuting hospice fraud. 21 people were charged in a hospice fraud ring exceeding $250 million. California's governor suspended new hospice applications while sorting through the fraud. That is a state instituting fraud controls. There are also reports that the White House plans to freeze hospice funding to California due to fraud. I was unable to independently verify that reporting, and we here at News Desk Now don't report what we can't verify. If that reporting is accurate, we'll follow up on that. Finally, I want to read you something directly from the executive order establishing this task force. This is not any characterization. These are the words of the order itself. Quote, due to lax immigration policy and immigration fraud, certain public officials admit into our country and provide sanctuary from federal immigration laws to migrant populations who are likely to rely on means-tested public assistance programs and increase the political support and power of public officials providing the benefits. Due to insufficient election integrity measures, some migrants who are not eligible to vote do so anyway, with the same public officials permitting widespread ballot harvesting schemes that compromise our election integrity and help these public officials remain in power. End quote. That is from the executive order establishing the fraud task force, the one about SNAP payment error rates. I'm not going to editorialize here. What I will note is that the states asked to provide personal data on SNAP recipients, the states described as refusing basic fraud controls, are also described in the same document as harboring migrant populations to increase political power and compromise election integrity. Michigan has a 9.53% SNAP error rate. Alaska has 24.66%. Kansas didn't comply with the request for personal data, and California is prosecuting fraud. All of this is easy to look into. So what is this task force for, and whom does it benefit? The sources for everything I've told you are in the description. I looked it up, you can too. Moving on. Let's talk about something. This year, Sudan entered its 4th year of war. You may not have heard much about it. It's been called the Forgotten War and the Abandoned Crisis. In April of 2023, conflict broke out between two factions. Those were the Sudanese Armed Forces, which is the country's national military, and the Rapid Support Forces known as RSF, the paramilitary militia. This is, at its core, a war between two generals fighting for control of a country. The Sudanese people just happen to be caught in the middle of that. Here's what 4 years of that looks like. Over 59,000 people have been killed. More than 11,000 are missing. The country is experiencing widespread famine, a gas crisis, and what is widely believed to be a genocide being carried out by the RSF, described as an attempt to create an Arab-dominated region through the elimination of other ethnic groups. The United Nations has found that both the RSF and the Sudanese military have committed war crimes, both sides. There are no heroes in this conflict for the Sudanese people. There are two generals and there are civilians. I think the civilians are the most important part. Now, the weapons. Because while the world has largely looked away from Sudan, Amnesty International has not. Amnesty International says it has found evidence of weapons manufactured in Serbia, Russia, China, Turkey, Yemen, and the UAE being used in Sudan. The central location of the RSF is under an international arms embargo, meaning weapons are not supposed to be getting in. And yet, reports suggest weapons are being smuggled through a specific route from the UAE through Chad into Darfur. But it doesn't stop there. In February of this year, Reuters reported that Ethiopia was hosting a camp to train RSF fighters. Ethiopia also upgraded the nearby Assosa airport for drone operations. Reuters reported this was backed by Ethiopia's ally, the UAE. Drone attacks have been reported on both sides of this conflict. Drones aren't cheap, and they do not appear from nowhere. And while the UAE has generally denied accusations of involvement in the Sudan, they have not denied a connection to the most recent drone strikes against Sudan's main airport. This is not historical. This is happening right now. Those strikes were in April, and it has been happening for 4 years. Now, the UAE is not the only country facing questions about this. When the public became aware that British weapons were being used by the RSF in what is widely described as a genocide, the BBC reported that a member of parliament demanded the government, and I'm quoting directly, quote, end all arms shipments to the UAE until it is proved that the UAE is not arming the RSF, end quote. The response from the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, was, quote, the UK has extremely strong controls on arms exports, including to prevent any diversion. We will continue to take that immensely seriously, end quote. That was in October 2025. This past April, 6 months later, an Amnesty International spokesperson stated, quote, yet, even as reports of horrific atrocities emerge, the UK has continued to cash in on arms sales, end quote. So, the same international community that spent years negotiating a deal to limit Iran's nuclear program, a deal we discussed at length in our last episode, has not applied equivalent pressure to stop weapons from flowing into a country where the United Nations has documented war crimes on both sides and where genocide accusations are credible enough to be widely reported. Iran, by the way, is also accused of involvement in this conflict, of arming the Sudanese military. Iran denies this. Current evidence suggests otherwise. I'm not going to tell you what to make of that. I will be doing several short pieces on Sudan in the coming weeks because this story deserves more than just one segment. Links to sources for everything I've told you tonight are in the description. That's Sudan. Let's get on to a happier note. And now, as is tradition on our program, it's time for our weekly distraction. This week's distraction comes from Reddit's R Made Me Smile subreddit, and it's just a German Shepherd playing with some Doberman puppies. You might be thinking there must be more to this story. Is someone an orphan? Someone injured? Guess what? I don't know. All I know is this is an adorable video of a German Shepherd pretending Doberman puppies caught it and then letting them all pounce on him or her and then getting up and running around. It's adorable. Look at that. What could be better than this? How else could I possibly end today's broadcast? They are just so cute. Yeah. All right. That's it for News Desk Now with Ashley Bennett, not Chet Waterford. See you next time. And this is the end of our program. Honestly, I'm starting to find it a little comforting knowing that I'll once again see a logo that doesn't feature my name or face. Because I know no one's updated it yet. I'm Ashley Bennett, still not Chet. Good night, good morning, or whatever this is for you. The news will still be there when you wake up. Unfortunately, it always is.
This concludes our broadcast day. Good night, and God bless America.